What's up, everybody? This is Marnick, Vandebroek, and welcome to a new episode of the Stand Up Talk. And this is a very special episode because it's the first one that we decided to invite someone over for an interview. And which person best to start this first interview podcast with than my longtime friend. He's a global employer brand expert. He's written so many books, and you can say that he was one of the founding fathers of employer branding, and he spread it across the world. And he is the founder and the current creator of the World Employer Branding Day, which is the biggest global community of employer brand leaders in the world. And I've been lucky to host the events for this year. Going to be the fifth time in the row. And I'm talking about none less than Brett Minchington. Welcome to the show.
Nice to be here, Marnick. Great to see you again, as always. I miss seeing you in person, but it's just as good online as well, mate. It's good to be on your show.
It's strange times, and thank you for doing this. I know you have a very busy schedule, definitely, because this World Employer Branding Day on the 4th and the 5th of November is coming up. I'll also put the link in the description if you are interested in that. So I'm not going to take too much of your time, but I want to start off before we really get the show in the world. See if you're really, because you're from Australia, which is great. You're going global with employer branding, and you're coming from the land down under. I just want to do a quick check if you know something about my country and that you're a real Aussie, as they say. So, lightning questions. There's no wrong answer to just see how this goes. You just have to choose. So, if you would choose boxing a kangaroo or swimming with sharks.
Oh, I think I'll stay on the land, the kangaroos.
Okay, if you would have a sandwich, would it have peanut butter or Vegemite?
Oh, it depends on the time of the day. Vegemite in the morning, peanut butter in the evening.
I can't understand that people actually eat that Vegemite.
Neither can I.
It's crazy. Then, this is a tricky one. Making an Instagram reel or an Instagram boomerang?
Interesting. I don't mind the reels, actually. I'd have a crack at a reel.
I expect the boomerang. So cliche.
They're old school.
Doing beach sports or just binge watching a Netflix show?
Oh, beach sports for sure. You've got to get out and about, especially living in Australia. We're surrounded by ocean.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. And the last one, what is your favorite Belgian beer?
Favorite Belgian beer. That's that one that you gave me that time, Duval or something. It's like 7-8%. Yeah, we have it here in Australia, actually, and I taste it from time to time. But you got like a million beers over there, but that's my favorite one.
Not true. That's a good answer. A lot of Belgianites are gonna love it. But I think you're ready. You're still true Aussie. So there's only one thing left to do, and that's get the show on the road. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Stand Up Talk.
Are you listening? Damn.
So Brett, welcome again to the show. Thank you for doing this. We're gonna give as much content in this 15 or 20 minutes that we're gonna do this and give them value. Now, we live in strange times, that everybody knows. With the COVID, markets are changing, the economy are changing. Looking at employer branding, which I think are really interesting, is that recently you have written that there is now a renewed focus on employer branding. So what do you mean by that? Is it because of the markets changing, or is it just in general?
Yeah, I think just the environmental conditions. So if you look at online, even so, there's a lot more focus on people, not profitability and company success. It's about what a company's doing for their people. So there seems to be, many more positive stories that are in the marketplace now. When I first started employer branding, it's nearly 16 years ago, I would have craved for an environment that we are in today. Now, obviously not the pandemic, but just the fact where leaders are people focused. So they're more compassionate. They're looking out for their people and looking at their lifestyles beyond their 9 to 5 or their workplace. So they're starting to look at them much more holistically. So some of the things that we've been talking about creating in employer brand leadership for many, many years, that environment is there now. And the leaders that I've spoken to over the last 6 months have all been very positive in regards to how employer brand leadership is now seen inside their organizations. They've been asked to come and assist with strategy, from the comms teams, from the HR teams, from the marketing teams. So, it's a really good time for our industry to be able to step up and to be able to, provide some of that assistance on strategy that's required. So that's what I was talking about in regards to a renewed focus on employer branding. I remember after the GFC 2008, companies' focus shifted from talent attraction more into the engagement and retention because, companies weren't hiring, they were more laying off. And that also was another era for employer brand leadership, where companies got much better at focusing on the engagement and retention side of it. So I'm seeing what's happening now is there's a much more holistic approach to employer brand leadership. And that's a very good thing for our industry. Outside of the fact that it's happening in a pandemic, I think the fact that our industry is coming together and we've got leaders that are actually pulling together HR, marketing, and comms, or working with those functions to create an environment where people feel comfortable and secure, but also productive in their work as well. So I think this is a really good opportunity for our industry, and also leaders that are either working in the industry or want to work as employer brand leaders.
And how do you see that evolving? Like you said, you have the times when there were a lot of layoffs. If you now look at current market, if I look at Belgium, for example, not saying it's in every country, but it's still doable, but a lot of people are losing their jobs. How do you think employers will approach that? Will they still embrace employer branding, the culture, the leadership, or were they like, well, there's more people offering their services than we have work? So do you think there's a change in that?
And I think the key issue is one is to understand what employer brand leadership is all about. All right. So if the understanding or the focus is on talent acquisition, then you can understand why there may be lip service paid to it now. Well, we're not hiring, we don't need employer branding. However, if you look at your employer brand holistically, then if you're laying off staff, or if you're recruiting, say you're in essential services, the same principles apply. So we're looking at a holistic strategy to how you attract, engage, and retain people. So depending on what's happening inside your organization and the world around you, the need for employer brand strategy is important in any environment. So it's just how leaders or companies are actually viewing it. And I think, if I look back over my 16-year journey in the industry, it was a very hard call in the early days, because it was all about talent attraction. And as soon as I said before, with the GFC came on board, organizations and leaders started to, shift their mindset to engagement and retention. So it's happening organically, but it gets back to education. So if a leader doesn't understand how to do employer brand strategically, then they don't focus on it strategically. So, we need leaders out in the marketplace that are actually teaching organizational leaders across functions on how to actually do it. And, the work that we're doing at Employer Branding College with our certification programs, we have leaders out in industry all over the world. They're actually they're getting those capabilities themselves, but then they're actually building those capabilities inside their organization. So it's a capability gap, but it's also an education gap. And those leaders that gain the skills and are able to implement in practice are reporting back really good results. So we're still in the early days of actually that education piece, but there's certainly, as you know, with the 100 case studies we signed off on last year over that 4-year period between agencies and their clients, there is some amazing employer brand strategy case studies out all over the world, not just in markets that you would expect where you'd see really good strategies, but it's happening all over the world.
Yeah, I think that's a really important one, because when I asked the question, I also made the mistake of saying, like, the market is changing. Employers are laying off people. So why do you still need employer brand? And also I made the mistake, which I think also still a lot of employers are making, is employer branding is just hiring and firing people. But employer branding is, like you said, so much broader. So if you're not hiring people, well, then your focus will be on retaining the right ones, culture, instead of just seeing it as that, like you always say, it's not an HR function, it's a business function. And I think there's a good one. People need to realize more and more that employer branding is not just, can we get people interested in our company? If we don't need people, then we're not going to do it.
I'll give you an example, like, for example, Facebook and Google, like 5 years ago, like, wow, it's still reasonably new, 10 years ago, but now, like, their businesses are much more mature. So they're also competing for talent with a number of other different organizations. You look at what's happening in the streaming services field. Yeah. So Netflix, which have an amazing employer brand, fantastic culture that's been written about. We had them speak at World Employer Branding Day recently as well. They've got a lot more competitors in the marketplace now. So, it's a fluid situation. So, you can't stand still. Organizations have to build employer brand leadership capability, whether they're growing or whether they're downsizing or whether they're a startup. So we need to get the understanding in the marketplace amongst leaders, whether that's coming through universities or whether it's being taught from CEO executive level down. What is employer branding? How does it deliver value to the organization? And yeah, I mean, everyone talks about how do you measure return on investment? Well, the same question should be asked on HR, should be asked on marketing, so everyone's got to contribute, but this is not, we're dealing with both the hard metrics and also the soft metrics, or, even macro metrics that I talk about in regards to things like, agility. So how quickly does the organization make decisions and get things done? I mean, what is the sentiment like amongst its candidates, employees, and its customers? And how integrated are their systems and processes? So if I'm coming in as a candidate into an employee, into, exiting, or if I'm a customer, how does all that flow together? Is it seamless, or is it a mixture of different bits of technology that are all clunky? Because at the end of the day, as consumers of either products or, employment, we desire good experiences, and those experiences are delivered through people in collaboration with, really good systems and processes, technology. So you have to look at it holistically. Employer branding is not one function. It's a strategic function within the business.
People like to really put that in boxes. This is also with our business. Like, started out with presentation, they want to put you at, like, you're the speaking guy. Stay in that lane. You're the speaking guy. And with employer branding, it started out with something that HR does, and people keep putting it in that box. And I think you're right that employer branding now more than ever has the opportunity, and should have the opportunity, to really have a seat at that leadership table as that business function. And if you're talking about leaders current market, current economics, of course, I hope 2021 will be way better than this year, but it will probably stay around for a while, the aftermath, as you said. What would you say currently, not just employer brand leaders, but just in general leadership? What are the skills, the roles that people need to play right now that will really make a difference?
Yeah, sure. So I think number one, they need to have awareness. So they need to have awareness of the world around them, not just, globally, but also in the regions and also in their local communities. All right. So they need to understand what's actually happening, because the impact of the pandemic is very different, as we were talking previously, in different parts of the world. Like, in the city next to mine, I live in Adelaide, and the city next to mine, in Melbourne, is on stage 4 lockdown. Like, so it's like a deserted town. Very different operating environment to what's happening here in my own city. So as leaders, we need to be aware of the world around us, and also understand the impact that's happening in different parts of the world. We need to project a sense of hope as well. So, people are looking towards leaders to, either guide them through the pandemic. They're looking to, scientists to discover vaccines. In Australia, they've pre-purchased vaccines from, what's coming out of the Oxford trials. And if it's successful, then, they're planned ahead that will, help Australians. So, they're doing that for us, but I'm also concerned about, okay, what about my friends overseas? So, how do we do this so that we all benefit as well? So I think leaders have to have that awareness around them. They have to be compassionate. So, I'm coaching anywhere up to 15 leaders a week. And, I could be talking to someone from, from London, someone from Manila, someone from Tallinn, someone from Portugal. And, the situation in each one of those countries is very different. So you have to be very personalized in regards to how you approach that as well. So, that's absolutely important. But as I said, we as leaders, we have to project a sense of hope as well. So, there is ways forward. There's no other option, is there? You can't go backwards. So what is that roadmap forward? And I think by consulting with your people and your broader stakeholders, strength in numbers. But, people want to feel secure if they're coming back to the physical workspace. Of course, what's it going to look like? How's it going to feel? Is my company looking after me? These are all things that are well in the capabilities of our leaders. But if the leadership don't have the right mindset, and they don't care, or they just can't wait for it to be over, it doesn't matter what you do. It's not going to work. So, if you had a poor culture coming into the pandemic, you either have a really bad culture now, or you had a wake-up call and you've started to turn things around. But, the strong leaders out there are pushing through, and they're continuing to be strong leaders, as you would expect from them during times like this.
That's true. It's also what we experience. If I look at the market, is either you have the companies that now get confronted with themselves, and they're like, is actually a good eye-opener. Like, we weren't doing that great, even though we taught, and we need to change our culture and things, or we need to change leadership. Or there are people like, well, we are really thriving. Business isn't great, but at least we're going through it as a team. And indeed, that global awareness, because like you said, everything's happening right now is global. Even that we're talking through Zoom, everything is still global. And the whole part, and like you're saying, understanding. I also think that the context part, understanding as a leader, what are people going through? And I think we're not going to have a political debate here, but I think if you look at most countries, that politicians are struggling to grasp the context people are in and not pushing the right buttons, that people are like, you don't understand what we're going through. And I think that's really important.
I mean, I've certainly, in my work and also the world around me, have seen that, you need a much more personalized strategy. So you can't blanket and put the same thing over everyone, which is, what we're seeing in Victoria. But, and that's why people are a little bit upset, is that, someone is in a regional town of Victoria saying that, there's no cases here, and, people across the border, 5 kilometers away are just living, as per normal type of thing.
Yeah.
So, but then again, I also see the other side is that, in a large city, how do you manage that as well? And, if you have the right technology, if you have the right systems and processes and tracking, you can do it, but you've got to set them up. But I think, this all gets back to the leader actually communicating effectively, letting people know that there's a roadmap and there's a plan. And as I said, if the culture wasn't there going into this, and you're trying to do all this on the fly and quickly, that's quite difficult as well, because the people that, you rely on for that support, they may not be supporting you because they weren't before they went into it. So, it's tough on leaders. And as I said, I think, if someone doesn't reply to your email for a few days, don't go off at them, because you don't know what's actually happening in their marketplace. So, I mean, every time I'm jumping on a call, it's like, how is everything in your part of the world? And just that initial couple of minutes of dialogue can really set the tone of the meeting. If they haven't done the work that they needed to, before the call, that's fine. At the end of the day, I'm there to help support them through. So we have to become more compassionate, more understanding, which I think are great leadership traits to have any time. We have to be more patient. So I think, that's been, something that I've really enjoyed as I've coached these people through, is that we're bouncing ideas off each other and helping each other out, because, sometimes I'm coaching someone that's going through a really tough time, and in the back of my mind, things are going 100 miles an hour as well. So
talking about global, like you said, you travel a lot, you've seen a lot of countries, but unless everybody, you're now doing everything through Zoom or Teams or whatever, virtually. If you're looking at the leadership, if you're looking at that awareness, that caring, that giving hope, how do you cope with doing everything digital? And how do you think leaders can keep their teams motivated and inspired in a time where you cannot physically be there?
Yeah, sure. So it's come with a lot of practice, mind you, right? So I've been working virtually for about 16 years, and there's been some really tough times through that. So I appreciate that leaders have had to really condense this time to be able to work out how to do a lot of these different things. Some companies, like Indeed, I was coaching a leader about 2 weeks into the pandemic that was on one of our courses, and she said, like, within a week, like 11,000 people, bang, working remotely, because they were already set up to do that, which was phenomenal. Yeah. And, Accenture had moved like 1 million people or something onto Microsoft Teams. Like, it was incredible how quickly people responded. But I've always found routines, like putting in place a routine. So with your teams, if there is certain times of the week that you're going to meet, or you're going to do either some fun stuff, or you're going to be checking in with people. So understanding, the different lifestyles that people within your teams have. So do they have children? Do they have elderly parents? What are their circumstances, and try and work out what fits best. Coaching leaders from multiple countries on different time zones. Australia's quite good because it's in the middle of like Europe and American time zones, but sometimes, it's really challenging, and we have to all accommodate. So I think just, routines, really good planning, and being considerate of individual needs. And sometimes you have to accommodate. So maybe one call is a bit earlier or later for another person, and then the flip side. But I think if how you try and build culture face to face is what, similar to what you should be doing on online as well. And, the reality is if you have a meeting that you're present, so you're not off doing double screening over here or working on something there, the worst thing you can do, maybe keep the meeting shorter so that when people are there for a particular focus, but make sure that they're planned well ahead. And there is a mixture of not just work stuff. Sometimes, it might be something more social, getting to know people as well. So I think those, those same type of parameters exist in the virtual world. But as I was saying before, just much more personalized. We have to really understand what motivates Marnick and how is he feeling and all that sort of stuff. And I think when we practice this and do it more often, we get better at it, right? But it gets back to before. If the mindset's not right, that's a hard skill to teach, all right? So sometimes, the leaders need some coaching and support to become good at that as well. So, leaders don't just arrive on the spot and they've got all this virtual stuff sorted out. We also have to provide them with support. So, employees or, even customers or partners understand the role that just because they're the CEO or just because they're on the executive, they've got everything sorted out. It's not the case. I think as we move forward into 2021, the roadmap does look a lot more positive than when we came into 2020. So, let's see how that rolls forward. But I think, our partner network with World Employer Branding Day, there's like 60 of them, and I'm in touch with them. It's incredible the amount of work that they've been doing with their clients to help them through. Some of them are extremely busy because they're working with, in demand and essential type work. Other partners, not so much, but they're working very closely with their clients to support them through. So I've been really inspired by that. It's a rallying of industry. I mean, it's when you want families to come together in these tough times. So that's one thing that's really inspired me. I can't do it all myself. You're involved as MC, you're doing a lot of work behind the scenes, and we've got people in Brazil, people, Belgium as well, helping out, and just all over the world. It's been incredible. And that's what it's been really nice to be part of, investing 16 years of your life. And I love it. I love bringing the world of employer branding together. So I can't wait to, even though it's going to be online, I can't wait for everyone to come together in November for the event.
Yeah, cool. And that's also my last question, because I know you need to go. You're back to back. You're organizing this event, World Employer Branding Day.
Not just tonight.
fifth year. I'm also glad that I'm hosting it. And you're also, because we talked about, you're doing everything online now, as a lot of people. You're also doing this for the first time, setting up probably the biggest global World Employer Branding event ever. And you're bringing all these leaders from, what is it? How many countries? 42, 60?
50 plus, I think.
50 plus countries together for an event. So you have to schedule everything. What can people expect? If they're like, I never heard of this event before, the 4th and 5th of November, I also put the links with the podcast, no worries. What can they expect? Why should I attend? Who should attend?
Okay, so we really focused it around 3 key areas, right? So the content. So this will be the biggest event of World Employer Branding Day in terms of content. So we've expanded the agenda. So a lot more companies are able to speak now, which is really, really positive. A lot more of the partners are able to, to present as well. Some of them in their local languages, which I think is fantastic. So they'll be partnering with their local communities to join the big community. Also the connection side of it. So connection's absolutely critical. So, there'll be ways to interact with the industry and mind you, this is the world's leading employer brands and agencies coming together for this event as well. So it's a great opportunity to actually, meet and greet those people in a virtual sense, but also to be able to carry those conversations afterwards. We've purchased a platform that allows us to, provide content on demand and community on demand as well. So we can continue to build that over time. And then the third thing is around the celebration of employer brand leaders and also the agencies for the work that they've been doing over the past year as well. So we have the annual Employer Brand Leaders of the Year Award, but it's about celebrating all of the leaders out there that are contributing to employer branding around the world. So I want to spend some time on that as well to make sure that we do recognize and celebrate those that are contributing to not only thought leadership, but also practice around the world. So I'm really excited. It's been a huge steep learning curve for all of us as well, but we've got an amazing global team around us and partners are contributing. So we're really excited about, doing it first online. It's the 5th edition. So, I can't wait for November.
That's cool. Anniversary edition, first one online, everything. Comedy. I'm curious how it'll go. I'm glad I'm going to be a part of it. And as I'm looking at this talk we had, I'm curious to see on how all the employer brand leaders that are talking to partners, because you talked about this is a time for leaders to show hope, understand context, have awareness of the the global team, what's going on in different countries. Everything is digitally, but that doesn't mean you can't care. And as you started out with, what is the ROI of employer branding? Like you said, it's a holistic view that you need to have. And it's not just recruiting people, it's everything. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I get the sense, if I'm hearing you talking for the last couple of minutes, is that where people will ask, what is the ROI? I think we are now in a time that employer branding and also other business functions, the ROI is how happy are your people? How engaged are your people? Because it's more about the emotions these days than the hard numbers because of the times we live in.
Yeah, and that's a good point. And the other thing I'd ask is, what is the ROI of not having employer brand leadership inside your organization? That's a question that needs to be asked, and also leaders need to confront some of the realities around that as well.
There you go. Brett, thank you very much for the talk.
My pleasure.
Really appreciate. What time is it right now?
It's time for my next call. All right.
Okay, cool.
5 in the evening.
There you go. But like you said,
so much, Marnick.
Some meetings are later, some meetings are earlier. Thank you very much. Thank you for listening. If you want to connect, what do we do? Connect? What could your LinkedIn, your Instagram?
LinkedIn is great. Yep.
All right, put a link there. If you want to know more, standupcompany.com. Brett, have a great night. Have a great call, and see you soon.
Thanks, Marty.
Cheers,
Bye
man.
for now. Bye now.
Are you listening? Damn.